Welcome back to part 98 of our Guidelines Masterclass Explainer, right here on Decode Healthcare with Harshal. I am Harshal, and today in part 4 of our 5-part series, we're diving deep into the trenches. We are systematically decoding the CPC, CCS, and CIC board exam traps related to trauma 7th characters, fractures, and external causes. Look, if you're gearing up for your medical coding certification, you already know the deal. This exam isn't just testing your ability to flip through a book and look up codes, it's testing your ability to navigate the complex, twisted logic of the ICD 10cm guidelines while you're under immense pressure. So today, we're going to break down the exact, sneaky patterns test makers use to trip you up so you can walk into that exam room with absolute confidence. Let's get into it.
Here's our battle plan for today's masterclass. First, Trap 1, active versus subsequent care. Second, Trap 2, fracture defaults. Third, Trap 3, external cause matching. And finally, we'll wrap up with some final thoughts to lock it all in. All right, starting right off with Section 1, Trap 1, active versus subsequent, the 7th character.
Let's dive right into Chapter 19 of the Guidelines. Imagine this. You're sitting in the exam room, the clock is literally ticking down, and you read this board question. A patient sees a second orthopedist for an active surgical evaluation. What is the 7th character? Now, human nature kicks in, and your brain immediately highlights the phrase, second orthopedist. Well, the test makers know you'll do that. They're intentionally tempting you to incorrectly choose a specific 7th character based purely on this second visit logic. They want you to assume that, hey, because it's a new doctor or a subsequent appointment in the patient's timeline, the coding should automatically reflect a subsequent encounter.
But listen to me, choosing option A, the 7th character D, just because a patient is seeing a new provider is an instant fail. It's a classic textbook test maker trick. Option B is actually correct here, applying the 7th character A for the active treatment phase. The correct choice is A because regardless of the doctor, the patient is still receiving an active surgical evaluation. Your focus has to remain entirely on the clinical status of the patient. It is completely independent of the provider's identity. To really hammer this home, let's pull directly from the source material. The official ICD-10cm guidelines strictly define this by the nature of care. They explicitly state that the assignment of the 7th character is based on whether the patient is undergoing active treatment, and absolutely not on whether the provider is seeing the patient for the first time. Active treatment includes major things like surgical intervention, an active ER evaluation, placing a cast, or changing the overall care plan. If any of that is happening, my friends, you are firmly in A territory.
So the crucial takeaway here is that A is strictly for active treatment. You use A as long as that active phase continues. On the flip side, D is strictly for encounters after active treatment is completed. It's for when the patient is in that routine healing and recovery phase. Think of a patient seeing their primary orthopedist for a routine follow-up just to check how a cast is doing. That right there is when you use D. Do not select A for a routine follow-up just because they happen to see a new covering physician that day. The nature of care is your guiding star.
Moving right along to Section 2, Trap 2, fracture defaults, traumatic defaults and extensions.
Now, exam writers absolutely love testing imperfect documentation. It happens all the time in the real world, right? So here's the scenario. A board question presents a patient with a fracture, but the documentation lacks specificity. It just says fractured femur. Or maybe they try to trap you with an incomplete Gustilo classification. Do you know the official default rules to apply so you don't lose incredibly easy points? The test is checking if you know what to do when the physician simply doesn't explicitly write open or closed or displaced or non-displaced. If you just guess here, you lose.
You need to memorize this exact matrix for exam day. Burn it into your brain. If the documentation does not state whether a fracture is open or closed, you must systematically default to closed. Furthermore, if the documentation doesn't state whether the fracture is displaced or non-displaced, you must default to displaced. So an unspecified fracture always defaults to a closed displaced fracture. Committing this highly testable visual matrix to memory is literally going to save you vital time and points.
But wait, the fracture traps don't stop at defaults. Test questions will frequently throw scenarios at you where a patient's fracture just isn't healing correctly. They'll specifically detail a delayed union, a non-union, or a malunion. And the trick here? They will list routine healing codes right at the top of your multiple choice options just to tempt you into making a hasty decision.
When you see complicated healing mentioned in a prompt, you need to immediately eliminate distractor options containing routine recovery codes like D. Just cross them out. For delayed healing, look for G, H, or J. For a non-union, your eyes should immediately scan for K, M, or N. And for a malunion, you are looking for P, Q, or R. Never, ever mix routine recovery extensions with complications. Okay, on to Section 3, Trap 3. External cause matching, the never principle rule.
Let's completely diffuse the external cause rules found in Chapter 20. Now, these codes provide vital injury data, absolutely, but they come with incredibly strict sequencing rules. First and foremost, and this is the absolute golden rule you must drill into your memory, an external cause code, meaning any code from Chapter 20, V0 through Y99, can never be reported as a principal or first listed diagnosis. Never. So if you're staring at a set of multiple choice answers and an external cause code is sitting right there in the number 1 slot, you can confidently cross that entire option out immediately without even reading the rest of the codes. It's a massive time saver.
Aside from sequencing, test makers love, and I mean love, to test 7th character extensions on external causes. They'll present a scenario and implicitly ask you, can an external cause code have a 7th character of D if the primary injury code has an A? To trip you up, they will intentionally misalign these 7th characters between the primary injury and the external cause code in the distractor options.
So here is exactly how to spot the trap. A mismatched claim where the primary injury has an A for initial encounter, but the external cause code has a D for subsequent, that is structurally invalid. A perfectly matched claim requires the 7th character of an external cause code to mirror the primary injury code perfectly. It's a 1-to-1 match. An A must always pair with an A D with a D, and an S with an S. Again, this isn't just best practice, folks. This is backed directly by the Section ICD guidelines. The rule literally states, assignment of the 7th character for external cause should match the 7th character of the code assigned for the associated injury or condition for the encounter. Knowing this rule cold allows you to instantly eliminate distractor options with mismatched extensions. It's an absolute game changer of a time-saving technique when you've got that exam clock glaring at you.
Finally, Section 4, Wrap-up and Final Thoughts. Let's defuse these traps once and for all.
Remember, the board exams test your precision, not your assumptions. So let's summarize your exact exam strategy to insulate yourself against these scenarios. Step 1. Prioritize the nature of care over provider novelty. A means active treatment, regardless of who the doctor is. Step 2. Strictly apply your fracture defaults. If it's unspecified, it is closed and displaced. And don't forget to use specific extensions like K or P for complicated healing, entirely avoiding D. Step 3. Never sequence external causes first, and always ensure their 7th character extensions match the primary injury code perfectly.
As we wrap up this explainer, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought. Now that you've mastered these specific trauma and external cause traps, are you truly prepared for the ultimate test? Make sure you review your guidelines, because that is exactly what we will be conquering in Part 5 of this series, Part 99, Final Boss Scenarios. We're talking multi-system complex claims and massive sequencing battles. Keep studying, stay focused, and I will see you in the next explainer.